What if I told you that watching a movie could kill you? Would you watch the rest of this episode? If the answer is yes, watching a movie just might kill you.
Holy cow! I'm in the movie!
Who the hell are you?
My second favorite Masters of Horror episode is John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns. In it, Daryl from The Walking Dead attempts to find an infamously disturbing film for the rich guy from Ace Ventura.
The fin absolu du monde, the absolute end of the world. The government seized it and destroyed it.
I'm a bit obsessive. I want you to find a print for me.
According to legend, the film caused a homicidal riot at its first screening and has never been shown since. Spoiler alert, the episode gets super dark.
I know what you want. You want to see the movie.
Ever since I first saw it, I've wondered if it contained any germ of truth. Not in the salacious, violent media begets violence way, but given the immersive and evolving nature of film, could watching one kill you? Or make you kill? Short answer, yes. In 2010, a man had a stroke when he got too excited watching James Cameron's Avatar. He was taken to the hospital and he died 11 days later. A real doctor said it was from overexcitement watching the movie.
Otto is a man of many talents.
Hey, great fish! Oh, a little squeeze of lemon, some tartar sauce.
In 1989, a Danish audiologist, which is one of those extraneous details that makes these bizarre stories seem more believable, died of laughter while watching A Fish Called Wanda. Which makes sense because it is so delightfully funny. So funny that it caused this man's heart to begin beating between 250 and 500 beats per minute. An especially ironic tragedy if you are a Monty Python fan.
It was not long before the army became interested in the military potential of the killer joke. Under top security, the joke was hurried to a meeting of Allied commanders at the Ministry of War.
Neither of these, nor the death by laughter of a young man watching the Bollywood sex comedy Grand Must Die in 2013, or the two people who died watching The Passion of the Christ, quite come close to the gritty Masters of Horror style deaths that John Carpenter promised us. But don't worry, those exist.
There was a time when the cinema was a place of spectacle and wonder, when unforgettable films played on gigantic screens that overwhelmed the imagination.
The Beast of the Black Forest was the name given to German serial killer Heinrich Pommerenke, supposedly driven to kill after watching Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments. Pommerenke raped and murdered a dozen women after the golden calf scene in the movie convinced him they were a fickle lot. More recently, a man who became obsessed with Queen of the Damned claimed that Aaliyah's character, Queen Akasha, told him to kill his friend, which he did, and he drank his blood and he ate part of his head. He had seen the movie over 100 times inside of 9 months.
He takes pleasure in only one thing: destroying life.
Then there's the Matrix defense, which is kind of like the Chewbacca defense.
Ladies and gentlemen of this supposed jury, you must now decide whether or not to reverse the decision for my client Chef. I know he seems guilty, but ladies and gentlemen, this is Chewbacca.
Successfully utilized in 3 different murder trials in the early aughts, the Matrix defense replaces a standard insanity plea and alleges that the accused thinks that they are living inside of a computer-generated reality, that the Matrix is real. All of this is to say nothing of the tragedy of deaths on set. The Crow, The Omen, The Twilight Zone, Fitzgeraldo.
Taking a close look at what's around us, there is some sort of a harmony. It is the harmony of overwhelming and collective murder.
But no film was more collectively murderous than The Conqueror, the most dangerous film of all time, claiming 46 lives.
You do well, Kumlik. For while I have fingers to grasp a sword and eyes to see, your treacherous head is not safe on your shoulders.
Filmed downwind from a nuclear test site, 91 of 220 cast and crew developed cancer following The Conqueror's release in 1956, including the film's star John Wayne, who died of stomach cancer in 1979. John Wayne also plays Genghis Khan in this movie. What do you think? Could a movie actually kill someone or make someone kill? Or is this all make-believe hokum? Let us know what you think in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for new episodes of This Exists every week. If Chewbacca lives on Endor, you must acquit. Last week's episode was all about migra corridos, where the US government hijacks narco corridos, a Mexican genre of folk music extolling the virtues of drug cartels and drug lords, and uses it as border-crossing propaganda. It's pretty interesting, and there were some great comments. It was really interesting to see all the comments from our Mexican viewers, who I did not know that we had, so hello, you have a lovely country. And especially from Natalie Martinez, who talked about how strange it is that these songs get played at family reunions, at all kinds of events where you'd think that super violent music wouldn't necessarily be the norm. And that's something that I think is an interesting dichotomy between narco corridos and gangster rap, which was a comparison that we made in the episode, but gangster rap never fully, made it into the mainstream in the same way, at least the impression that I've had, that narco corridos have kind of become a very, very, very popular style of music, not just for young people, but for all generations of people in Mexico. So a great comment from her and several of our Mexican viewers about how they actually hate narco corridos. Jonathan Trejo said that narco corridos and Drake are his guilty pleasures, which I really love as this kind of ridiculous balance of I hate listening to music that's about gangsters, and I hate listening to a sensitive guy from Toronto. So pretty interesting that those are things that you see as being things you shouldn't listen to. But he talks a bit about the idea of some of these narco corridos being sanctioned by the actual drug lords that the songs are about, which is true. In a lot of cases, these narco corrido singers have to go to folks and ask for their permission, and then sometimes they get killed. So that's super intense and crazy. EW275X is another one of our Mexican viewers, and he says he sees nothing wrong with the narco corrido concept. And if rappers that he likes can sing about violence and drug culture, why should Mexican folk music be any different? And I think that is a super valid point and part of what makes it such a complicated issue for people to talk about. Stefan B brings up Charlie and his orchestra in the history of propaganda and music, which is a super interesting point that we didn't touch on. This was swing music created by the Third Reich in an attempt to demoralize American and British troops. I don't think it really worked or took off, and he hypothesizes that most of the audience was probably German people, given that in Germany swing music was banned. Either way, Charlie and his orchestra is a fascinating piece of music and propaganda history that we did not touch on in the last episode. My Encore 2323 corrected me when I said that Boondocks and Blaze You Dead Homie were part of the Psychopathic Records family. In fact, they left Psychopathic Records, and he's worried that Juggalos are going to come and shoot me in the night. So I like that in a video talking about one of the deadliest wars, raging in the world right now, which is of course the Mexican drug war, the real concern is actually from white rappers in face paint coming to shoot me in the night. But it was a great point, and I did not mean to misrepresent them, and I actually have nothing but respect for Juggalo culture, to be clear. Andrew Kilborn said he doesn't know if he would like a song any less if he found out that an ad agency made it, and likens it to pop music songwriting, which I think is an extremely valid comparison that we didn't even seek to make. But the fact is, when you're listening to a Katy Perry song, you're not actually listening to something that Katy Perry wrote and conceived of in her brain. You're listening to something that was probably written by and conceived of by a team of 6 people who are trying to produce the most popular product possible. So is that any different from an ad agency? That's a troubling question that we should probably explore in another episode. This week's book is Richard Krauss's Raising Hell, Ken Russell and the Unmaking of the Devils. It's a fascinating history of one of the most controversial films of all time, Ken Russell's The Devils. The most infamous scene in this movie is called The Rape of Christ, and it's this extended sequence where nuns scream and blaspheme inside of a church. It involves a nun masturbating with a cross. It gets really super crazy, and despite the fact that this movie was made decades ago, it remains impossible to find, banned all over the world, and extremely, extremely controversial still. It had a tremendously negative effect on Ken Russell's career, despite him being, one of the greatest British filmmakers of his generation. And Richard Krauss does an excellent job digging into what made this film so viscerally offensive to people and what ultimately unmade it, both for the studio, for the director, and the ultimate repercussions of that. So definitely check out Raising Hell, Ken Russell and the Unmaking of the Devils, and good luck finding that movie, because you can't. It's fucked.